So it's really important that I make sure my trinomial is written in standard form. So remember, the standard form of a quadratic, I'm just going to abbreviate that, STD form is AX squared. I see it's still frozen. Sorry, I'm recording. AX squared plus BX plus C. That's the standard form. We always need to make sure our trinomials are written in that form, right? So the first method that we're going to use today is the AC product method and grouping. So we've been using the AC product method. We've been taking A times C and summing it to B. And you already know how to group. So we're just taking what you've been doing with the AC product and pulling it over into our grouping, okay? So remember, A times C. A is 2, C is -3. So I need to know what 2 times -3 is. It's -6. All right. Adds up to the B term. The B term is -5. So what are the two numbers that I can multiply together to get -6, that when I add them, I get -5? Say again. -2 and -3. Let's see. -2 plus -3 is -5, but -2 times -3 gives me a what? It gives me a +6. That won't work. Good thinking, though. What else? Grab your calculator. Pick it up. Y equals -6 divided by X if you can't think of them. What you got, Zan? Okay, so let's look at that. +2, -3. What is +2 minus 3? What does that give you? Okay, that's all right. I'm glad you're thinking it out. What do you have, Aiden? -6 and +1. Let's check that. -6 and +1. So -6 plus 1 is -5, and -6 times 1 is -6.
Can you unlock the video for the packet? There's like a packet I have to write before I do the test.
You mean to fill out your answers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why is it locked?
I don't know. It said video unavailable.
Okay, give me 3 minutes and I will. Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, so we're going to use the product. We're taking the AC product and we're going to put it in grouping. So just like before, once you choose your two factors, so our factors are going to be -6 and +1, I'm going to replace those. So I'm going to write this out. I took the 2x squared minus 5x minus 3, and I'm replacing this -5 with -6x and a +1x. That's all I'm doing. The problem is still the first term and the last term are still the same. So that's what this grouping box up here is. Okay. So we're going to factor by grouping. Factor by grouping. So when I factor by grouping, I need to have 4 terms. So all I've done is taken this trinomial. I've rewritten -5x as -6x plus 1x. So I didn't change the trinomial at all. I just changed it to, from a 3-term. The value is still the same, but it went from having 3 terms to having 4 terms. So we can factor by grouping. So what is the greatest common factor between 2x squared and -6x? They're both divisible. They're both even. So I can take out a 2. God bless you. And they both contain an x. What about this next one? What's the greatest common factor between 1 and -3? Just 1. So when I take my 2x out, 2x squared divided by 2x is x. -6x divided by 2x is -3. Plus 1. And 1x divided by 1 is just x. And -3 divided by 1 is -3. How do we take, once we do grouping, how do we write our polynomial? You remember, product of two binomials. What do I put first? The first term is, when we group, GCF plus GCF, right? The second term is the twin. So 2x plus 1, and the second term is x minus 3. All right, I'm going to check it with FOIL, and I'm going to check it off to the side over here. So I'm going to kind of go this way and see if I can't FOIL that out. So 2x plus 1 times x minus 3. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. 1 times x is a positive 1x. And 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. When I combine my two terms in the middle, I end up with 2x squared minus 5x minus 3, which is exactly the polynomial that you started with. So that means you did that properly. Okay? Questions? All right, let's go down to the next one. The next method that we're going to use is the box method. You guys liked using the box to multiply? Well, we're going to do the opposite. When you multiply, you put the terms on the outside. When you use it to factor, you put the terms on the inside. So when you factor a trinomial, it says to draw a 2 by 2 box. So I've already got that there. You're going to put the ax squared term in the upper left-hand box. So that's this guy right here, the 2x squared. Your first term goes in the top left. Your last term, the c term, which is positive 12, goes in the bottom right. You have to list the factors, right? So we're going to multiply a times c. 2 times 12 is 24. Has to add up to negative 11. So let's think about that. When I have a positive product and a negative sum, that means both of my what? Put it away. All of it. Got it? Everything. When I have a positive product and a negative sum, it means both my factors are what? Negative. So I'm looking for two negative numbers. Two negative numbers. So what are two numbers that multiply to 24? Yes, ma'am. Negative 3 and negative 8. So it says multiply, list your factors. Okay. Once you choose your factors, you're placing the factors as coefficients to the x variable in the remaining boxes. Coefficients mean that they have a variable attached to them, right? Doesn't matter where they go. So my first factor was negative 3. So I'm going to write that as negative 3x. My second factor was negative 8. So I'm going to write that as negative 8x. And then it says extract common factors vertically and horizontally. We're going to put a loop around this. What is the greatest common factor in this row? 2x squared and negative 8x. What's the greatest common factor? 2x. What's the greatest common factor in this row? 3. Do you see that both of your terms are negative? That means both of your groupings are going to have a minus sign. Now we're going to go vertically. What's the greatest common factor between 2x squared and negative 3x? X. What's the greatest common factor between negative 8 and 12? 4, yeah. And it's going to be joined with a minus sign. Join it with a minus sign. So my factors are 2x minus 3 times x minus 4. 2x minus 3 times x minus 4. So the last method is probably, I think, one of your guys' most favorites. It's called slide and divide. It's called slide and divide. So basically, you take the leading coefficient, you move the a term away by multiplying it by the c term. So you're actually going to take this and multiply it. 5 times negative 4 is what? Yeah, so I end up with x squared minus 8x minus 20. And now you're going to factor it like you would when a equals 1. The factors you choose are the factors you use. So let's see. I'm going to make my little chart. So a times c, negative 20 is my product, adds up to negative 8. So what are two numbers that I can multiply together to get a negative 20 that when I add, I get a negative 8? Remember, we said when you have a negative product, one's got to be positive, one's got to be negative. One factor is positive, one factor is negative. 2, negative 10. Oops, I shouldn't have crammed them both on the same side. 2 and negative 10. Okay, so when I factor this, I have x minus 10 times x plus 2. However, we started this off by multiplying by 5, right? We took this and multiplied by 5. So, we took this term at the very beginning and we multiplied by 5. So we have to undo that. That means that we have to divide both of these by 5. Well, the first one divides nicely. Negative 10 divided by 5 is what? Negative 2. The second one gives me a fraction, and we factor with integers. So the trick is to take this 5 and move it in front of your x. 5x plus 2. So you divide each by a, each of the factors by a, that 5. If it gives you a fraction, slide it back to the front side of x. That's what we just did. It gave us a fraction, so we slid it back to the front side of x. Let's check this. This is our final answer. Let's check it with FOIL, see if it works. So x times 5x is 5x squared. X times 2 is a positive 2x. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10x. And negative 2 times a positive 2 is negative 4. When I combine my terms in the middle, I get 5x squared minus 8x minus 4. And I think that's what I started with. Okay, I think that's the polynomial that I started with. What do you think? Okay, we're going to practice these 3 methods. So the first one, we're going to use the AC product with grouping. So A times C. What's the product going to be on the top of the box or the top of the X, and what's the sum going to be? Well, 10 times 66 is 660. Has to add up to the B term, 67. You're going to need to get your calculator out. Press the Y equals button. It's the top button, gray, Y equals. You're going to do 660 divided by X. Y equals 660 divided by X. Let's start listing our factors. So 1, 660. What's the next one? 2 and 330. Say again, 3 and what? Okay. Is it divisible by 4? 4 and 165. God bless you. Is it divisible by 5? 132, I heard. Yeah. 6? 7? No. 8? 9? 10? 10 and 66. 11? 12? Have we come up to any numbers that sum up to 67 yet? Yeah, 12 and 55. These are the 2 factors that you're using. Positive 12, positive 55. So remember, when you factor by grouping, you're replacing the B term with your 2 factors. So I have 10n squared plus 12n plus 55n plus 66. These 2 terms, 12n and 55, add up to 67. I just went from having 3 terms, a trinomial, to having 4 terms. I'm going to factor it by grouping. I group these into 2 binomials. What's the greatest common factor between 10n squared and 12n? 2n. What is the greatest common factor between 55n and 66? 11. So when I take out my 2n, Let's see. 10n squared divided by 2n is 5n. 12n divided by 2n is a positive 6. I'm going to take out my positive 11. 55n divided by 11 is 5n. And 66 divided by 11 is positive 6. Remember, when you factor by grouping, you take GCF plus GCF. That's your first binomial. Your second one is the twin. If you don't have a twin, that means you did something wrong, right? So the GCFs that I pulled out, I took out a 2n and a positive 11. The twin, that repeated term, 5n plus 6. That's how this factors. Okay. Next one is using the box method. Next one, we're going to use the box. So we still have to do the A times C adds up to B. So let's see. 4 times 22 is 88. Adds up to negative 19. Remember, when you have a positive product and a negative sum, that means that both of your factors are positive product, negative sum. Both your factors are negative. Both your factors are negative. What two numbers can you multiply together to get 88? That when you add them, you get negative 19. Yeah, negative 11 and negative 8. So I'm going to draw a box. So when I use the box method, what goes in the first box, top left? Yeah, the ax squared term, 4x to the second power. What goes in the bottom right? The c term, 22. What do I put in the other boxes? My factors as coefficients. That means add the variable. Okay, so now I'm going to go horizontally first, looking for GCFs, then I'm going to go vertically. So let's see. What's the greatest common factor between 4x and negative 11? Just x, right? 11's not divisible by 4. Yep. What's the greatest common factor between 8 and 22? 2. See that both your factors are negative. That means that both my binomials are going to be joined with a negative. What's the greatest common factor between 4x and 4x squared and negative 8x? 4x, yes, ma'am. And the greatest common factor between 11x and 22? 11. 11. So this factors out as x minus 2 times 4x minus 11. X minus 2, 4x minus 11. And the diamond method is really what we've been doing. With that box, I wanted to show you something different, so I changed this to slide and divide. Because the diamond is just what you've been doing with the x. Okay, so we're going to do the slide and divide. So when we use slide and divide, the first thing I do is I take this term and I multiply it by the guy on the end. So that gives me v squared plus 83v plus, what's 132 times 6? Yes, ma'am. So now I'm going to do my A times C adds up to B. So two numbers that multiply together to give me 792 that add up to 83. You got to get your calculator out. Y equals 792 divided by x. Y equals 792 divided by x. Delilah, I'm calling on you to give me some factors of 792. So pick up your calculator, take the y equals button, do 792 divided by x, and we're going to start listing them. Do you need help or you got it, hon? You got it? Okay, go ahead, start shouting them out. 2 and what? Okay. Do you have them, Cameron? Will you do it, please? 2 and what? 396. Is it divisible by 3? It is. 3 and what? 264. Is it divisible by 4? 4 and what? I can hardly hear you. 198. Okay. It's not divisible by 5. How do we know that? Because it doesn't end in a 5 or a. Good job. Is it divisible by 6? Yeah, because if it's divisible by 2 and 3, then it's divisible by 6. 6 and 132. Keep going. Is it divisible by 7? 8. 8 and 99. Is it divisible by 9? Say again. 88. Is it divisible by 10? 11. 11 and 72. 12. We're going to stop right there. Does anyone see a factor pair that adds up to 73? Yeah, 11 and 72. So slide and divide. Remember, this means V plus 11 times V plus 72. But we have to undo the multiply. We multiplied both sides. We multiplied by 6. So that means that we have to divide by 6. Okay. What does it say under the slide and divide rule? The last thing it says, if dividing by the A term produces a fraction, what do you do with that? Put it back. Yep. Put it right to the front. So 6V plus 11. And what is 72 divided by 6? 12. Slide and divide. Okay. I'm going to get you set up on your homework. I'm going to get one of them set up with you for each one, and then I'll get you guys started. Okay. So for this first one, it says we have to use the AC product method. I'm going to do both the X and the table because I think that you guys, some of you like the table and some of you like the X. So let's see. 4 times 3 is 12. Has to add up to 13. 12 is my product. 13 is my sum. What two numbers can I multiply together to get 12 that when I add them, I get 13? Yeah, 1 and 12. 1 and 12. We're grouping. That means that we're taking this 13x and replacing it with 1x and 12x. So I rewrite my problem. 4x squared plus 1x plus 12x plus 3. I have to group with 4 terms. That's the only way that I can group. Divide it into 2 binomials. I'm going to stop right there. Okay. Let's look at the next one. The next one is the box method. So we still have to do that A times C. 10 times 6 is 60. Adds up to 19. What are two numbers that you can multiply together to get 60 that when you add them, you get 19? Pull out your calculator. You guys still have an activity that you're going to do. I'm not letting you start your homework until we do our activity. So the faster, what is it? 4 and 15. Okay. So what goes in the first box? Top left, the A term, 10x squared. Last box, the C term, 6. What goes in the other two boxes? My two factors as coefficients, meaning add the variable. GCF. What's the greatest common factor between 10x squared and 15? Okay, I'm not going to do it, but yes, you're right. 5x. Okay, so that's how you do that one. Last one is a slide and divide. Last one I'm going to do with you is a slide and divide. So remember, I'm going to slide this over. This is multiplying by 12. That gives me x squared plus 11x. And 2 times 12 is 24. This is very much like our warm-up. What two numbers can you multiply together to get 24? That add to 11. Well, it's going to be 8 and 3. So that means x plus 8 times x plus 3. But once you do that, what do you have to do? You have to divide by 12. You have to divide by 12. We're going to do this one all the way. So if you have a fraction, you have to first, before you move it back, make sure you can't reduce it. Can I reduce this fraction? Put it in your calculator. 8 divided by 12 and give me a fraction answer. 8 divided by 12, give me a fraction answer. 2/3. 3 divided by 12, give me a fraction answer. 1/4. So remember, we can't have God bless you, we can't have the fraction, so we take the denominator and slide it to the front. The denominator and slide it to the front. So that gives me 3x plus 2 times 4x plus 1. So you have to make sure that you reduce the fraction first. Okay. So you have questions 1 through 13. 1 through 13.